Paul Schwartz, New York Post beat writer, covers the Giants, covers the NFL, covering the Super Bowl, covering Chris Hogan, Penn State lacrosse player back in 2009. Good morning, Paul. How are you?
Yes, Chris Hogan, Monmouth College football, right? Who knows? And you know what's interesting? I interviewed the Monmouth College football coach, Kevin Callahan, who has been at Monmouth since 1992, and guess what we started our conversation about? Yeah,
Hogan playing on that team, and I was told by many that, and I know I was there because I called the game that day, that I must have named him on a couple of tackles because he was playing in the secondary.
But guess what I started my interview with Kevin Callahan about?
What did you, Bob Ford?
About his coaching start in 1977 with the Albany Great Danes as the offensive backfield for Bob Ford.
There you go.
Kevin Callahan started his career with Albany, as so many, and Kevin Callahan said to me, people don't know it, but Bob Ford in Albany back then was the cradle of coaches.
There's no doubt. Almost everywhere you go, when you run into a coach who's been around for a while, coaching college football, especially at that level, they all seem like they have a tie to Bob Ford. I did read your column, and he said, yeah, how stupid was he, Callahan, back in those days? But knowing that here he sees Chris Hogan catching touchdown passes the championship game, and when he played at Monmouth, he had him at defensive back.
Yeah, he laughed at that. It's funny. I mean, sometimes we look at these, smaller college coaches and think, oh, isn't this unbelievable? And it is unbelievable, but, Kevin Callahan coached Miles Austin for 4 years, another New Jersey kid who played 10 years in the NFL, as, your listeners know, the first 8 with the Cowboys, the last one with the Eagles, and was a tremendous receiver. So it's not like these guys at any level have no idea what NFL football players look like, but Miles Austin played 4 years at Monmouth and ended up dominating at that level. Chris Hogan caught 12 passes in one season at Monmouth and was more of a defensive back than a receiver. So when you put that into it, then it's amazing. This guy's 28 years old, and he's played for the Bills for a few years before coming to the Patriots. But, I think it is just it's obviously a great credit to Chris Hogan, and it's a greater credit to Belichick and certainly Tom Brady, who just find these guys and find these receivers and make them into really good players, and they do not a lot for other places and do a lot for the Patriots.
And now we'll try to figure out whether Belichick will utilize Hogan in the same way, or does he throw us another curveball and maybe go back to featuring somebody else that we've never heard of in that offense, or maybe goes back to our local product, Paul Schwartz, and that is Dion Lewis from Albany Academy, who scored 3 touchdowns against Houston, but really wasn't a factor against the Steelers on Sunday.
Well, he'll do something. The Steelers, were admitting that they were really surprised by the no huddle that the Patriots came out with. So, the only thing you can be sure of is that Belichick will come up with something on offense and certainly on defense, which is going to be the greater challenge to stop this, really high-powered Falcons offense. But whatever we can assume that he will do defensively, he'll probably do 180-degree different, and it will probably be fairly effective. The one thing about the Patriots, they haven't won a Super Bowl. They've only won one in a long time, and that one was by the grace of God of, Marshawn Lynch not getting the ball at the end of the game, with the Seahawks. But their Super Bowls are always close. No matter how dominant they are in the regular season, their Super Bowls are by and large always close games. So I guess that's why the point spread is only 3 points, because no matter what happens with the Patriots, they play close games in the Super Bowl.
Paul, can we assume that with Tom Brady and Matt Ryan that this is going to be a high-scoring game?
Well, the bookmakers think so. The over-under of 59 is the highest in Super Bowl history. Last week the over-under for the NFC Championship game was 60.5 points, and you had one team, the Packers, who did not score until 5 minutes into the third quarter, and the game still went comfortably over. you know what I mean? I mean, it did not. It's 24-0 at halftime, and you say, well, the Falcons got the memo on this high-scoring game, and the Packers didn't, and it ends up being a over 60 points. So I think it probably will be fairly high-scoring. Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's going to be 34-31, but it could be. I don't think it'll be 17-14. Put it that way.
Paul, Brian Mariano sitting in with Roger today. Now, we go from Chris Hogan, who actually was a Giant for a short time in 2011. Let's look at the Giants season this year. I'm a Giants fan. How do I looking the entire season, how do I look at this Giants team? Is it a success, or am I kind of saying, I don't know?
Oh, it's a success. I mean, they went from 6 wins to 11 wins. That's a success. They made the playoffs. That's a success. So there's no question it's a success. Now, you get greedy this time of year when you start watching these teams go further in the playoffs, and you think, all right, how does my team compete with that? How does my team become the Falcons this year, next year? And that's a little more difficult. I think, the step the Giants took was a very large step, but the next step is the really, really difficult one. Now winning another 11 games next year, getting maybe a home playoff game, and, advancing in the playoffs. That makes it more difficult. And, there's things they have to do. The Senior Bowl's going on now in Mobile, Alabama. I was there last year because the Giants had a high pick. I am not there this year. The Giants have the 23rd pick, even though, 23rd pick could end up being one of the top 5 or 6 best players. You never know. There's definitely things the Giants have to do. And when you look at it, when you look at these teams that made it to the Final Four, and you look at these teams in the Super Bowl, they can score. The Giants were a terrible offensive team for stretches this year. They barely averaged 15 points a game the last 4 or 5 games. That is inexcusable. So when you look at this Giants team right now and you say, how can they become the team that gets into Super Bowl 52? Easy, more points. They need more points.
And they need a better offensive line. They could use a tight end. I did read last week, it became a story, Adrian Peterson thinks he can still get it done. And on a list of teams that he would like to play for, the Giants were on the list, Paul Schwartz. What's your thoughts on the Giants trying to go after and signing a guy like Adrian Peterson? Very lukewarm. Clearly Adrian Peterson is a Hall of Fame player, but he's past his prime. The Giants have shown that they have not, their free agency spending spree last year was all on guys on the upswing. I think if he's the missing piece of the puzzle, you think about it. I don't think he is. He's also got tremendous baggage. The Giants coming off a year where they took incredible heat, most of it rightly so for the way they handled Josh Brown. You want to bring in a guy who will open up a whole can of worms with, his domestic abuse issues that he had with his child. He deserves the right to play if someone wants to sign him. But, I think that factor, plus the fact that he's on the downside, plus the fact that the Giants certainly need another running back, but I think they need a young, quick running back. Look at the Falcons. The Falcons have, a two-headed, running back with Devonta Freeman and Tevin Coleman. These are young, fast guys. I think that's what the league is about now, not, older, workhorse kind of running backs. Hey, a couple more for me, Paul. One, JPP. Do you see him back? Are they going to give him a big contract? I read $85 million. What's going to happen with JPP moving forward?
Well, if it's $85 million, they're not going to re-sign him. You cannot have Olivier Vernon at $85 million and JPP at $85 million. At the defensive end spot. I would guess that he will not be back. I mean, I think they want him back. I don't think they want to break the bank for him. This injury that he had that cost him the last month of the year was not his fault, but it didn't help. It does not help. He gets injured. He's been hurt. Obviously, he's playing with a permanently damaged right hand, with 8.5 fingers on it. Played very well. He's not the JPP of 2011, but he's an excellent player. He's a top tier starting defensive end. They have a lot invested in Snacks Harrison and Olivier Vernon. I think they'd like to re-sign Jonathan Hankins. I don't think they want to break the bank for him either. The one thing about JPP, if they don't re-sign him, then they have to find his replacement because his replacement is not on the roster. It's not Romeo Okwara. It's not Owa Odigazawa, by any stretch. He's been really disappointing in his 2 years. So, if it's not him, it's got to be someone else who's not there. They're not going to just promote somebody. But I just think somebody out there will offer JPP, I would think, more than what the Giants will offer.
Paul, final question. If you're, I'm asking the question, who's the best wide receiver in the National Football League? Who would you put at the top? Julio Jones, Antonio Brown, Odell Beckham Jr.? Julio
Jones, for a lot of reasons. First of all, because he keeps his mouth shut and plays, doesn't get penalized, doesn't post videos, doesn't, make out with the kicking net on the sideline or punch holes in the wall. And another thing, Roger, when you stand next to this guy, I mean, he is immense. Antonio Brown is great. Odell Beckham are great. I can look them eye to eye, pretty much. Julio Jones is a man. He is a big, strong, athletic guy. I think he's the best. He put on a show last week, in Atlanta against the Packers on a toe that was really bothering him. His size, his athleticism, and just the fact that he keeps his mouth shut and works his butt off, puts him number one in my book.
I couldn't agree with you more on that, partner, if I had to choose between those three. And we'll roll that over to our listeners coming up in the next hour. Always a pleasure, Paul Schwartz. Keep in touch. You Albany basketball, big game tomorrow night against Vermont.
Well, I pegged Travis Charles as my favorite player on the team, a couple of months ago, and I know he's had a couple of ups and downs, but he looks really good. He's my guy. Are they going to be able to compete now? I know they're on back of a roll, beating some bad teams. Are they kind of? I know Vermont will be a good test for them. You think they can move back into the upper echelon in the league?
I'll let you know after the game tomorrow night, because it's Vermont and everybody else in the America East, so they're going to play the best team tomorrow night. We'll find out. They've won 3 in a row against teams that they should have beaten.
Yeah. I think they're a little hot and cold. Their guards. We'll see. Yes, hopefully, it'll be interesting to see if Will Brown can pull something out of his hat here.
You got it. Paul Schwartz, New York Post. Thanks for a few minutes on Big Board Sports.
Anytime, guys. Take care.